Hello and welcome to today's webcast hosted by the Sales Management Association. Our session will start in just a few moments. First, a quick reminder that our webcast today will be recorded. We'll be making it available for playback in the Sales Management Association's resource library. Our members will also find copies of today's slides available for download there. Our session today is one in a series of web-based Sales Management Association presentations that feature practitioners and thought leaders in the field of Salesforce effectiveness. The Sales Management Association is a professional association. We serve professions of sales operations, sales enablement, sales effectiveness, and sales leadership. If you're joining us for the first time, we hope that you will consider joining the association, and also encourage you to visit us online. You'll find us at salesmanagement.org. Additionally, we encourage you to join us for our first ever online conference. That's May 6th. We're producing this event very quickly to meet our members' many urgent needs around issues such as planning, performance management, coaching and development, sales enablement, technology, and many other issues related to adapting to the current crisis. Our keynote speakers will include retired General Stanley McChrystal, former Joint Special Ops Command under President Obama, who will speak about leadership in crisis. Additionally, we made the first 2,000 registrations absolutely free. They're going quickly. If you've not already registered, we encourage you to do so. Reserve your reservation at salesmanagementconference.com. My name is Bob Kelly. I'm Sales Management Association Chairman. Today I've got the pleasure of moderating a great panel on a very important topic. So I'm going to be introducing our panelists now. They are Brian Elliser from Aircall, Francois Grenier from Typeform, Mike Paladino from PandaDoc, and Kartik Rajaram from Freshworks. Brian Elcesser is Senior Director of Sales Development at Aircall, a marketer of advanced phone solutions that are easy to set up, use, and scale. He's a frequent speaker and author on sales development and is a New York volunteer firefighter and a professional opera singer. Brian, we don't normally call out side hustles, but in your case, both are of such note that we wanted to make sure we included them. Welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Bravo. Molto bene. Our next panelist is Francois Grenier, who has been coaching me on pronouncing his last name and is skeptical that I'll get it right before the end of our session today, but we're pleased to have him. He's head of technology partnerships at Typeform, a software as a service company specializing in online form building and online surveys. Francois previously held senior positions in business development and partnerships at Watchout, Wandera, Oberthur Technologies, and Nokia. Welcome, Francois.
Hi, thanks for having me. And you're pronouncing my name perfectly as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, good, good. Mike Paladino is head of sales at PandaDoc, which is an all-in-one document automation solution. Mike started his career there at PandaDoc in sales as an account executive and worked previously in sales at VM Turbo and US Pavement Services. Very happy to have you with us. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
And unable to join us by video is Kartik Rajaram. He is Senior Director and Country Head for India Business at Freshworks, a Sales Management Association underwriter and maker of a suite of software solutions, including Freshsales CRM, and their products are used by more than 150,000 firms around the world. Before joining Freshworks, Kartik held sales leadership positions at Akamai Technologies, Salesforce, and Microsoft. We're very pleased to have you with us, Kartik. Welcome.
Thanks, Bob. Hi all. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Excellent. Well, gentlemen, let's get started. Our topic is rethinking the business-to-business sales funnel. you've been so kind to dedicate some time over the past few weeks to discussing these issues, and so I'm going to try to organize our thoughts in a structure similar to that we've been discussing for the past few weeks. And I'd like to start, if I may, with just having you give us a few observations about both your firm and also kind of what you're seeing in the current environment of late. Brian Elsesser, can we start with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's given everything that's happening right now, we're directly in the middle of the COVID piece. We're directly in the middle of people reorganizing themselves. We've seen a lot happen, right? We've seen businesses that are going out. We've seen businesses that are maintaining but maybe reducing spend. What we've had to do is make sure that as a company, we're structuring ourselves to not only have success for ourselves, but have success for our customers. Aircall is a very customer focused and first company. And so as we think about the actions that we're taking, we're trying to think about the way in which our customers are responding to this crisis so that we can meet them there. What we found is that we're seeing a lot of new I guess you would say, verticals that we normally wouldn't necessarily be selling into come inbound and asking for help. We've been seeing that happen in like the education and government sector for sure. There's been a lot of that. We've also been seeing the way in which we've approached our customers have to adjust. It's even on outbound sales side, which is really where the majority of my time sits. We think about now this idea of true one-to-one communication, and really thinking about putting ourselves in the shoes of our customers to help solve the potential issues that they're having, more so than we've ever done before. And I think the big shift for us has been in really reframing our strategies and our focuses in this regard. Even on our customer side, we've seen us having to be lenient and helpful and supportive to customers that are going through some difficult times, to help them meet the demands that their businesses need in order to survive, and at the same time make sure that we're not taxing them. So it's a full court press, if you will, on strategy and thinking about new ways in which we can help our customers.
Thank you. There's a lot there to unpack. We'll do our best to get to some of the details around those issues as we go through the session today. Francois, your thoughts?
It's a very interesting question. I think one of the good things from being at Typeform is that our vision is that every interaction counts in any time, and our values are around empathy and togetherness. And so right now, it's actually even more relevant to own those values and really make sure that we transpire them with every interaction we have with our customers. Some of them are struggling, some of them are new and completely new to Typeform because they were brought to us by this new context and new needs to run their own businesses. So it's really important for us to actually continue handing out a helping hand and really trying to understand how we can better help them. So new type of customers as well, new type of personas, new types of jobs to be done, and use cases that are flowing through our demand gen because of this particular context. So we also have to readapt. I think internally, the most important thing that I can see right now is that everybody is trying to get closer to our customers. So the product team is doing some work to make things easier for those new customers that would have never come to us before. Our customer success team is really dedicated to making sure that our existing customers and new customers are as successful as possible. And our sales team is really trying to make sure that they're spending the time with the customers that need it the most.
That's great. Thank you, Francois. Mike, Paladino.
Yeah, some great topics already brought up from both Brian and Francois, two that really seem relevant to PandaDoc and the market as a whole. Customer centricity from Brian and empathy from Francois. These are two things that are certainly ramping up in a major way during the crisis. And I think thirdly is sort of a general pragmatism that businesses need to sort of adopt right now. So when I think about those three things, it's changing at every stage and for every individual in the business and for every buyer. So it's really about being empathetic to both your employees and your customers or prospects, trying to be pragmatic and smart about any decision that we're going to make in this uncertain time, and obviously paying attention to what's happening to our customer base and trying to do what we can from an empathetic lens to try to move forward in a mutually beneficial situation. So really everything through an empathetic or a pragmatic lens, we're viewing things that way at PandaDoc, and it really is consistent across the board based on role. So those are the two things that I think have really seen an uptick in attitude over the last 6 to 8 weeks as we've adjusted to remote work.
Yeah, well put. Thank you, Mike. Kartik, your general thoughts. We may have lost you, Kartik. Are you able to hear us?
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We could. Kartik, we will come back to you and give you an opportunity to respond, but thank you, gentlemen, for kind of setting the stage for us. And what I'd like to do now is maybe consider the sales funnel and try to kind of look at it from top to bottom. Kartik, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just got lost briefly. Sorry.
Okay, great. We're going to move on. We'll come to you first for the next question, though. So if we consider the top of the funnel, including the impact of this pandemic crisis on demand itself, can we talk a little bit more about sort of what you're seeing with demand generally, but also some specific changes related to the kinds of things coming into the funnel now that are worthy of note? And Kartik, we're happy to come to you first on this question.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bob. I think like for all of us, it's been a very eventful past couple of months. We've had to rethink a lot of things, right, from our sales and marketing strategies, our offers. And to specifically your question, right, we've had to kind of relook and redefine our ICPs, our ideal customer profiles. We are seeing some newer verticals and newer industries showing a lot of interest and coming in through inbound. We're seeing a lot of traction in education. We're seeing a lot of traction from some of the state and central governments. And I think it's been a very interesting phase where we're looking to, obviously there has been a bit of a slowdown in demand from our traditional ICPs, and which has made us rethink our marketing strategies. We are expediting working on a new playbook to ensure that we're able to cater and service effectively the new verticals and industries that come to us to support, right? So I think we are looking at collaborating very closely with the marketing teams, the customer marketing teams, segment marketing teams at Freshworks to build out the right kind of playbooks, the right kind of messaging and positioning to ensure that we are in a position to cater to their requirements and us.
Good, thank you, Kartik. Other thoughts? Brian, can we go to you next?
Well, so I think when I think about our sales funnel currently, something that I think that we have to keep in mind is that there are people that have an immediate need, at least in AirCall's perspective, there are people that have an immediate need to get set up in a very robust, remote environment, which is something that AirCall meets the need of. We happen to be fortunate enough to be in a position of help and be able to help these customers that need this kind of service in the environment that we're in. So, I mean, it puts us in an interesting position. But what we do see, though, on our outbound sales side, very differently from our inbound sales side, is that many of our customers that maybe didn't necessarily have the hand raised to say, help me, we're finding that, the conversations are just going to take a little bit longer. I think when I speak to my peers as well in the space, and we talk a little bit about the sales funnel or what to expect right now, everyone's talking about, there seems to be a lot of panic around Q2. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? The uncertainty. You hear the word uncertainty almost ad nauseum. And I think what I've been focused on is like, well, let's get beyond Q2. What's Q3? What's Q4 like? We're going to have some element of normalcy at some point. And it's really a matter of the work that we're doing now to make sure we're preparing ourselves to be able to meet those demands later, as much as we're able to meet the inbound demands of today. So I think that's kind of how we're envisioning it. It's kind of a twofold piece.
Yeah, that's really a great concept. I know a lot of companies and many of your customers, they're lunging at solutions now to fix this, sudden problem that they're dealing with. But there's also an opportunity to fix what comes next. We like to call this the next normal. So it's not just about adapting, it's about thinking ahead. It's a very unusual opportunity. And so, Francois, I'm very keen to hear your thoughts about this.
Yeah, the next wave is actually a super relevant topic for us because we see new customers coming in. And I think if we go back to the initial question about top of the funnel, that really is what clicks the most with us. People coming in with new use cases, or the typical profiles that were not necessarily a big part of our customer base is now coming in bigger crowds to us because we're basically helping them. A good example is small mom and pop shops, brick and mortar, that never really had an online approach to their own business because they had to close the doors. They still want to continue operating and generating at least a sustainable revenue to continue operating and to make sure that the store can stay open whenever the situation settles. And so they're exploring with online business, and so they're coming to us asking for help. And those are people that don't necessarily have experience in online marketing and things like that. So we see not only a different kind of persona coming to us, but also a persona that requires a little bit more handholding and support from us. So the proportion of higher touch customers is definitely growing for us. And that allows us, surprisingly enough, even though it's more time consuming to really get our heads around what they need and how we can help them, it also helps us better understand what the customers that we had before that never necessarily talked to us, because Typeform is essentially a self-serve model, actually needed and we're expecting from the tool, and we're trying to work around the limitations of the tool and so on. So we're also able to make it a better product on the long run. It's going to take a while, but we're seeing good benefits in that space. So better serving our customers, again, I'm going back to that. It really is what strikes us right now.
And good, Mike, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, to pile on top of Karthik with, seeing some new ICPs, we're certainly experiencing some new types of logos at the top of the funnel. And to mention some of Brian's points about, folks really looking for a robust solution out the gates, it's seeming that people are much more decisive earlier stages. And so by leaning into that, we found, with an empathetic ear, actually leaning into, is this something that you guys need immediately? It sounds like it is. We just really want to confirm that. We're seeing much faster stage progression on those types of opportunities. And to Brian's point on stuff that's maybe earlier in the funnel, maybe in an awareness phase from an outbound standpoint, it's taking a little bit more time to get them to feel that pain specifically. So adjusting to those things a little bit and trying to take that pragmatic approach and follow the dollars and capitalize off of them.
Yeah, let me try to summarize some of the things that we talked about in this question, namely what's happening in the top of the funnel that's different and worthy of note. So I think everyone talked about new types of customers coming into the pipeline. These are verticals you may not have served before. So Karthik mentioned government, which is a very specialized kind of customer to serve. They're popping up in the funnel all of a sudden. And not only are they new to you, they may be behaving differently than they've behaved in the past. So that's very unusual and requires some adaptation. Many new opportunities are new to your solution. So they have this kind of bipolar issue which is they may need it urgently, but they also need a lot more higher touch than new customers typically demand. So that has the potential to really twist the sales effort required for that. And then other opportunities that may have been sort of standard core opportunities at the top of the funnel may be taking longer now. So these are the things I took away. I want to talk now about the sort of middle of the funnel, those kind of core opportunities that you've typically always served. Mike, I want to stay with you on this question, if I may, and have you comment just on what's happening with the kind of bread and butter customer you used to serve. Are they behaving differently?
Yeah, it's a great question. So fortunately for PandaDoc, our application and our bread and butter, our ICP application, is really for sales teams and sales leaders. So as folks are moving more to a remote workforce across the board, regardless of just whether you have a large workforce or sales workforce, we're seeing consistent performance from our typically solid ICP stuff, but it really depends on when the opportunity came to us. So we saw a very strange performance in any opportunity that was created pre-COVID, or really like pre-shelter in place, let's just say. And those opportunities performed wildly differently than things were previously. So we definitely felt some stuff on pipeline that was created pre-COVID. But like I was saying before, due to the fact that our ICP isn't really impacted in a negative light unless the businesses are suffering, we're fortunate enough to see post-COVID very similar performance from our ICP cohorts, and actually even increases from other logos that we didn't service in the past, similar to Karthik with government and higher education. So it seems that the mid funnel is performing the same way from a conversion standpoint, but the one negative aspect is our average sales prices are definitely unpredictable now, mostly due to the fact that no one really wants to make big budget decisions right now with all of the uncertainty happening externally. So some stuff at the very bottom of the funnel, which I'm sure we'll get to in a moment, but some of that is performing from a different standpoint when we're looking at our average sales prices. So that's the biggest impact I've noticed, at least in our funnel.
Good, thank you. Brian.
Yeah, I think it's as expected. What I mean by that is you have a lot of businesses that are really directly being affected by the crisis more so than others, and AirCall being the type of service that we are, we're a phone system for pretty much anybody that needs a phone, especially if you have a customer care department or a sales department. Like we are there for that. So if you can imagine the travel industry, right? Vacations, rentals, like these are things that are going down in terms of usage currently, just given how we're all sheltering in place. And so you could imagine that the decline in business for those businesses, it results in a reduction of need from our service, and we see that. But at the same time, like to mention, as we said earlier at the top of the funnel, we still see those new verticals coming in from the education and government sector. I think from our middle of the funnel, our core bread and butter, a lot of our core bread and butter is still engaged. E-com has been doing very well and in this market, and so they're probably servicing more customers than they've ever have, and so therefore they need more of what we're doing than they probably ever needed before. Business services, real estate, I mean, so that a lot of the verticals that we would traditionally sell into, we're seeing, I think, the behavior change is very on par as to what Mike just had mentioned, is that we expect to see certain people make buying decisions in a more conservative manner in the current market. But I think we also expect those same businesses to ramp up business after the successful, completion, but end to this whole COVID outbreak.
Right, whatever that may hold in store for us, and many scenarios being floated out there, including my favorite, the scenario of a bloody recovery one that comes so fast and is so strong that it overwhelms our ability to respond. So perhaps the best possible outcome, but still incredibly challenging. So again, thinking ahead, these issues may not in fact get easier even in recovery. Kartik, can we hear from you on this?
Sure. No, I think we are absolutely seeing what Brian and Mike articulated. And one of the things that we are also seeing is there is a fundamental shift in the kind of conversations that we're having with customers, right? In fact, very early in the sales cycle, they want us to clearly quantify the impact of our offerings and business metrics, be it improvement in productivity or cost savings or revenue improvements or customer sat, because they want to be very careful and very circumspect in where they want to invest and where they want to spend their money. In fact, I was having a conversation last week with the head of customer experience of one of India's largest conglomerates, and he wanted us to do a very extensive, comprehensive ROI study on what our offering could do for them, right? And so we built it out. So in a way, it is helping us kind of go back, and some of the things that we always talk about having clearly articulating business value, quantifying business value, now it's become an imperative. We are actually sitting with marketing, we're sitting with our product experts to build some of those things out.
Good, thank you, Kartik. And Francois, your thoughts?
On the existing customer base front, it's interesting because when you look at the global picture, it's hard to really see a major difference. But when you start looking into different groups of customers, we see, I guess, two main groups. One that actually goes deeper into the product and is seeking more advanced use cases and actually turning into power users pretty quickly because they need to implement newer workflows. A good example for that is our payment integration. So people that need to be able to very quickly put together a system to offer online gift card buying because people cannot show up to the store, but they will eventually need to. So rather than waiting until the doors reopen, they buy gift cards now. So those customers used to be fairly basic, and now they are advancing into the product and going into integrations and workflows and so on. And we have a totally different group that actually needs to streamline operations, reduce the amount of advanced campaigns they're running, and really streamline their conversations with their customers to the bare bones essential messaging. So I guess it actually spreads those two groups separately, or get them to cross path in a way, which is pretty fascinating. It doesn't really change overall what people take out of the product. It just changes the way individually they behave around the platform.
Yeah, these are really great nuances, and they of course require a different approach and different messaging from your sales organizations. We'll talk about how we're responding to that. Let me first try to summarize what we talked about with this core middle of the funnel, if you will. So I think generally in this group, there's not been necessarily a big impact in demand, but you have seen some changes related to maybe lower usage by customer, lower average price, decisions being a little more conservative. So in that way, it's suppressing perhaps the overall revenue and the value of these opportunities. Kartik spoke in a compelling way about his solution, which is seeing a lot more buyers shifting toward a greater emphasis on ROI. Their spend is becoming more precious, so when they do choose to spend it with you, they need to be much clearer about the potential outcomes and return. And then, Francois, you did a nice job outlining some of these nuances in the middle of the funnel. Perhaps not an overall value, but when you look at specific segments, you see the emergence of these kind of different behaviors. Super users popping out of typically very easy to predict kind of customers, and also customers really leaning down, that is cutting the scope of the solution they use as a reflection of the just very lean approach to handling things during the crisis. So all very good, thank you. Let's move on to the bottom of the funnel. Let's talk about what's happening with retention and also with churn in customers. Francois, I'll stay with you here. Let's, if you can, tell us, what you're seeing and how you're approaching these issues.
Sure. So one of the largest teams at Typeform is the customer success team. And churn is one of the major focuses that we have and we've had for the last couple of years. So we've always taken churn very seriously, and one of the first thing we actually did when businesses started shutting down or slowing down their operations after this this outbreak was reaching out to them, identifying first that we would expect an uptick in churn, which we actually saw in some verticals, so that was fully expected, but trying to understand as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible whether it was actually linked to COVID-19 and whether there was any expectation that we didn't know about that we needed to know about and try to meet. And also fully embracing the fact that some of those businesses were going to struggle, and so we needed to be empathetic and try to be understanding and supportive as much as we could. So churn, if you have to, we totally understand. Let us know how we can help, and let us know how we can help whenever you can come back and whenever you need a prop to actually get your business going again. So the empathy part is really, again, prevalent in that whole exercise for us, is trying to understand what's going through our customers' lives that is making their decision necessary at this point, and trying to anticipate working again with them in the future and doing it in the most humane way possible. So that's super important for us.
Indeed. Kartik, your thoughts on this one?
Absolutely. I think churn is a super critical metric for us at Freshworks as well. I think we're proactively reaching out to a lot of our customers to offer COVID relief, be it free months, credits, etc. In fact, one of the things that I'm also noticing, and I've been talking to some of my peers across, that they are repurposing some of their capacity, their sales capacity, for example, the hunting capacity to account management. Because at this point in time, Freshworks' motto is be a friend to the customer, right? And that is what we want to do. We want to kind of embody that. And in fact, in my team, I have repurposed a bit of hunting capacity to account management to ensure that we are there with our customers. We go deep, we understand the pain points, the requirements, and serve them to the best of the ability that we can. So those are things that we're seeing. We are proactively reaching out, we're talking to them. And another very good outcome, one outcome out of this is that the collaboration between our farming account management teams and the customer success teams have gone up substantially. There's a lot more sync ups, there's a lot more cadence, there's a lot more account planning happening. So these are things that we're seeing. But yes, I think there is churn. Customers are also adopting a wait and watch approach. I think all of these things are definitely things that we're seeing at Freshworks.
Good, thank you so much, Brian.
Yeah, look, this is the most important thing that your business can take a look at right now in this market, right? Is that how can you employ an element of compassion? And Francois, I think you knocked it out of the park with that empathy piece. This is where that matters. Look, if you probably already have done this, but I know we did it right away. Is we had to do a churn analysis to try to identify at-risk customers, just based upon what we saw as the at-risk industries that were going to be mostly affected by everything going on with the crisis. And so I think that, first we did that and identified that, but the second is to know that you need to approach this market with that level of compassion and flexibility in order to make sure that you're going to be able to meet the demand of your customer, and hopefully they see that and they come back later. The truth is that this market is going to produce market winners and market losers. You're going to have companies that are going to win in the long term, and you're going to have companies that are, potentially and very sadly going to die. But that, generally speaking, is how business works anyway. And I don't say that without any sort of lack of compassion for what's happening, because I really do feel for these industries. I think that I say that, though, just to keep in mind that, like, you need to make sure on your churn side that you approach it in a healthy way. so that you have the ability to regain as much as that as possible when the time is right to do so. And at the same time, you maintain the relationships that you're going to have in there, because every person that's going to lose or have to find a new job is going to still be your customer in the future. You should never be selling someone once. You should be selling someone multiple times through wonderful relationships that you build over time. And I think that's been our approach to it.
Great, Mike.
Yeah, we've beaten the empathy dead horse, but it's obviously a huge aspect of what's going on here. And one thing that popped in my brain when Karthik was talking was about the hunting aspect of account managers. That's actually something that we're doing here as well. The AM function rolls into sales. So we've noticed the sort of the easy expansion dollars coming on, renewals with a little bit of lift. Those are behaving a little bit differently right now. So we can't rely on that to hit our new expansion revenue targets. So positioning those resources with an outbound approach almost into whether it's subsidiaries or different departments within the businesses that we already have penetration with, putting more of a focus on the AMs on pipeline as opposed to the dollars this month. So adjusting that a little bit more to putting more hunting on the AMs is something that we're also doing at PandaDoc.
Do I understand that correctly to mean that you're focusing more on expanding relationships that you have as opposed to going out and getting new ones? There's more of an emphasis on growing existing customers, and that's where the reallocation's going.
It's more of just a focus on those specific resources because there's less growth in accounts that are renewing now. They're more straight renewals. Our customer success team can manage that type of function and make sure that churn's not happening in those types of renewals. So we're able to free up some time for the AMs without those types of opportunities for them to work, to take more of a proactive approach into the base to try to create expansion pipeline from existing accounts. Yes, that part you were correct on, Bob.
Gotcha, thank you. So I'll quickly try to sum up this thing, at least a few points that I found especially relevant. First of all, this churn we're experiencing, all businesses would be experiencing some extra normal churn, and we have to treat it differently. It's not typical churn. In fact, it has the promise of being temporary for many of these customers that are exiting or taking a hiatus. And if we take a type form philosophy that every customer interaction counts, these interactions where a customer is leaving you or suspending a relationship with you, they count double or triple, maybe more. So the way you communicate at this time is extremely important, and the need to do that with both empathy and also a bigger picture understanding of what's happening and why. So these are all good things, as well as the strategy many of you mentioned of reallocating these sales resources from perhaps top of the funnel, getting new logos, to expanding business in other parts of the funnel. So thank you for your insights there. Let's move ahead. We'll talk a little bit now about how you're measuring the funnel. I mean, all these changes have to be impacting the way you size the opportunities in the funnel, the way you characterize the behavior of the things in the funnel, and report throughout the organization. So I'm very curious to hear your thoughts about how measurement is changing and how the analytics are look different now in your funnels. Mike, I'll stay with you.
Sure. So I mentioned obviously ASPs earlier in the call, average sales prices. So that's one of the immediately noticeable changes to funnel performance. Some of those deals coming in at a lower value. The other pieces that we're seeing is due to some perceived increased demand with folks moving to remote working environments. We are seeing an influx of volume leads at the top. But the conversion rates of, let's say, lead to a closed one or to a logo are dipping a bit, not just due to higher volume, but I think also performing a little bit differently mid-funnel from a demand standpoint. So like I was saying before, it's the average sales price that I'm seeing. I'm seeing the biggest change, but we're also noticing that just a high influx of demand at the top does not necessarily equal, consistent growth or equal growth to what's happening at the top of the funnel. So it's performing a little bit differently in the middle. But those are the largest things I'm seeing in terms of, funnel metrics changing over the last 8 weeks.
Good, thank you, Mike. Kartik, can we go to you next?
Absolutely. I think, again, we are keeping a close watch on metrics like average selling price, conversion rates, etc. One of the things to Brian's point earlier is we don't want to be too myopic for Q2. We're looking at new metrics like conversations. How many conversations are we having in our ICPs? The way we're looking at measuring SDRs, or the way we are looking to enable our SDRs to say, okay, how many conversations in a week is an SDR having with accounts in the ICP, right? Because I think if you're going to take too much of a very short-term view of just Q2, I think it's lost cause. We don't want to do that. We're definitely seeing ASPs, RPAs coming down. We're seeing conversion rates taking a bit of a hit, especially on the SMB side. But one of the things that we're doing is to ensure that we are keeping the conversation, things that are in our control, right? We need to clearly understand what are the things which are in our control, what are the things which are not, right? Things in our control, like doing the activities, having the conversations, right? Getting better at our positioning, getting better at our value proposition are things that we are looking to focus on. And I think this is something that we discussed, I think, last week as well, when we kind of briefly synced up. We're even changing the comp plan of our account executives, right? We're not purely measuring them on revenue. We are bringing in an MBO component to say, okay, are you getting better at product pitches? Are you getting better at your pipeline discipline, the CRM, right? Are you taking additional initiatives, right? So these are things that we are looking to do to ensure that we are able to recognize, reward, and measure our teams on things that are in our control.
Very good. Thank you so much. Great. That's great. Others we've not heard from, Francois or Brian, any comments?
I'll chime in there. Kartik, that's really interesting, by the way, that you're restructuring some of that compensation piece for the AEs in a maybe a qualitative rather than quantitative way. That's very, very interesting. On our end, look, like very contrary to Mike, our cost per sale hasn't really, our ARPA hasn't really been affected. If anything, we've seen increased ARPA, but I think it's because of the type of service that we have and what we drive. And and it's very different, I should say, on the inbound, on the outbound side of our business. On the inbound side, first and foremost, we don't see that big drop in ARPA, and we actually, if anything, have seen. And it's starting to dip a little bit now, but we have seen an increased conversion rate to close one. People are moving quite quicker. They need to have that phone set up and they're ready to rock. So I think it's a matter of like that people are prioritizing the needs that they need to get in place, and they're trying to figure out what those immediate needs are, and if they can identify them, they're rocking it, and that's kind of what they're figuring out. On the outbound side and the metrics that we're driving, I have to be honest, we haven't changed the metrics that we track. I think what we have done is we've driven a new metric, which is we've asked for what we call VIP touches, which is another way of saying, like, we want to make sure that you're selecting really good contacts at the account level that you're reaching out to. And when you do that, we want to make sure that the information or the content that we're sending them is very curated. It's very much like a perfect fit and match for what we should be speaking to that person about. Because again, everything in this market has to be that one-to-one communication. And then I think to go a step further, we are really setting our sights on Q3 in outbound. So I'm going to dive into this a little bit. We know there are businesses that are still thriving. I said this a minute ago, but we know there are businesses that are still thriving and thriving because the market still needs them. And we know that we match into those, and those are typically still a piece of our ICP. Whereas we know the closing cycle, the sales cycle might be a little bit extended. we know that we're setting ourselves up for success by still going after some of that traditional ICP in accounts that we know are doing okay, and that are accounts, but prospects that are doing okay, we know that are surviving. So I think it's a little different for us. We on outbound on Q2, we anticipate some of that like uncertainty where we're going to end up. I think no one really knows exactly yet how that's going to look, just because it seems to be a wave. But the last piece I'll say on this is we're approaching our outbound strategy on a weekly basis. And what I mean by that is that we're taking a look at how we're addressing this market, how we're talking to our customers every week to make sure that the messaging and what we're sending out is relevant to what's happening in the moment. And I call this out because I know companies use like Outreach or SalesLoft or some sort of sales engagement platform. And if you create automated messaging that is several weeks in advance, you potentially are going to send a message that's not overly relevant for the moment in which it's sent. So we're trying to really approach it with a thought of what's happening in that moment.
No, that's great. And Francois, your thoughts?
I can't agree with Brian more than what he just said is actually extremely relevant to us. In terms of cost of sales and interactions with our customers, we probably see less requests for hands-on demo sessions and things like that from our sales teams. But the ones that we still get are way more advanced needs as well. People need to very quickly be efficient at that. So the discovery period seems to create some sense of urgency for people to actually go deeper into the product faster. So the investment spent on those particular leads is a little bit bigger, but at the same time, less of those leads actually need that approach, because a lot of them are actually trying to figure things out for themselves. We barely had time to rework our onboarding documentation and so on, at least not necessarily specifically for this current situation. But it's just a matter of people not necessarily having the patience to wait for a sales call to happen and so on, and trying to figure things out by themselves. And we find out that they actually do figure things out by themselves. And the ones that don't actually need to be speaking with people because they're trying to do fancier things with the product. So incidentally, our sales team is less involved in sales calls in general, but the ones they are jumping on are more hands-on, and they rope in people from product team, from the integrations teams and so on, to really get those advanced use cases going for our customers.
That's great, thank you. I'm going to move us ahead. I'm going to, in fact, make this our last question and ask you, in light of everything we've talked about, and specifically, we've talked about a lot of changes and reactions to some extremely unpredictable market circumstances. So this is challenging enough for the sales organization. It's also challenging to your bigger firms, those who support sales or who may be removed from sales but are quite impacted by what's happening in the marketplace. Can we talk just a little bit as a way of maybe summing up and take the opportunity to provide any closing thoughts that you might also have about these demands beyond the sales organization in your firms? And that would be great. Francois, I'll stay with you and let you go first.
Sure. So beyond the sales organization, I think for us, it's extremely important right now to be efficient at the way we communicate with our customers. So the current messaging coming out from the marketing team, the customer success team, and the sales team to that extent needs to be essential, needs to be helpful, and needs to be somewhat prompted by the kind of feedback that we're getting. So we need to be able to back channel that feedback and infuse that into the messaging that we send out. So whether it's data from our churn survey, whether it's data from sales calls that we're having, or people reaching out to the support team. If we see an influx in tickets for a particular feature, for instance, that's what we're gonna try to fuel into the messaging, because that seems to be the immediate demand. And we try to be way more agile and efficient at that, so the cycles are a little bit shortened. Again, the idea is to be as helpful as possible to our customers, and making sure that they can continue operating to the best of their current abilities.
Great, thank you. Mike, your thoughts? Mike, you might be muted.
Sorry about that. Didn't want to interrupt Francois. He was giving such great feedback there. So what I'm noticing is almost like an all hands on deck on the revenue side of things. And to Brian's point of, pushing messaging out, we've actually had to push our enablement calendar out a bit to react to some of the new logos and some of the new demand that we're seeing in new verticals. So from product marketing to sales enablement to sales management, customer success, product, we need alignment on these new markets, and we need a plan for the sales team to adapt. So as opposed to doing some of the enablement plans we had on the calendar, which were mostly based off of our annual goals and what we saw coming based off of our operating plan. Not to say that's gone out the window. We've just prioritized a few other things and put those things to the front. So everybody on the revenue team seems to be in that all hands on deck sort of mentality to try to follow what's converting and capitalize, strike while the iron's hot while we can.
Thank you. Kartik, we'll give you the last word. Before we do, we'll go to Brian Elselser.
Sure.
It's one of them.
Absolutely. I think.
Go ahead, Brian.
Go on, Brian.
So I think that look, like what we do today, what your organization does today is going to echo, and I mean internally and externally, is going to echo into history for your brand. It's about how you are going to address everything and the choices that you make that are really going to matter. So I think first and foremost, everybody's mission on every single team has to be check the ego at the door. Yeah, you might have a title, you might have a general job, but I think there's never been a more important time to get scrappy, to get adaptive to what's happening. We have a one team mission at Aircall right now, which means that just because you might have been the X person responsible for Y doesn't mean that you're not porting numbers for one of our customers right now. Okay, like we're getting all teams that may have been maybe a little less busy, given that their job might be more of an office environment role. We're employing them against other areas of the business where we're seeing an influx of need. And I think the biggest thing is that you have to be thinking about how do you help the overall mission of the company right now in this environment. And if you can do that, and you're going to meet your customers' needs, you're going to meet your employees' expectations, and I think it speaks for how you're going to be viewed and measured on the outcome on the outside of this whole crisis. So yeah, what you do is going to echo.
Yeah, so well said. It's an exercise in fighting fires for many of us. We'll remember how we responded, and your insights are especially keen, given that you're literally fighting literal fires when you're not fighting the kind that we're fighting. So thank you for that. And Kartik, we'll let you back clean up as it were, and have the last word. Your thoughts on this?
Sure. No, I think it's definitely all hands on deck for us as well. We definitely see improved collaboration between sales, marketing, customer support, customer success, product marketing. Some of the playbooks that were pending for the longest time have gotten done in a week because I think people want to ensure that they display a sense of urgency. And one great thing that I'm seeing in the organization is also that there is a lot of psychological safety that's being given. People understand the situation. And in fact, there is a very clear mandate from our leadership to say, okay, this is the opportunity for you guys to sharpen your axis, to learn, and more importantly, unlearn and adapt. Right? So, and we're seeing that, we are tracking it, we're having MBOs, like I said, to ensure that all of that gets effectively driven. But yeah, all in all, I think it's been a very eventful 1.5 to 2 months. And to Brian's point, I think what we do now is going to define our brand, define our place in the market as well.
Yes, thank you. Well said. Well, gentlemen, we're running late and short on time, so with regret, I'm going to stop discussion at this point. I would like to personally thank you for such incredibly useful and timely insight on this topic. So a very personal and heartfelt thank you to our really excellent panel, Brian, Francois, Mike, and Kartik. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you,
Bob. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Before we leave, I'll just remind everyone that our next event at Sales Management Association is our online conference, May 6th. If you've not taken advantage of our offer of a free registration for the first 2,000, we encourage you to do so at salesmanagementconference.com. We hope to see you there. For everyone at the Sales Management Association, please stay safe. Thank you. Goodbye until next time.